This morning, I'm talking about the goal of meditation, and this is a two-part talk. Second part will come next Sunday. So are you all back with me? It's a very powerful, beautiful meditation, and it will follow, our talk will follow very nicely with it. Anyway, first let me tell you, thank you for being here this morning. We welcome everyone to our live stream broadcast and everyone here, and just know how grateful we are that we have this opportunity to share the teaching with everyone. All right, meditation. Meditation has become increasingly accepted in society today as a positive input into our lives. When I first heard about meditation a few years ago, it was considered an Eastern practice associated with Buddhism and or yoga. Then years later, the public began to hear about meditation to improve one's health. And by that time, many physicians, and they still are, encouraging their patients to practice various forms of meditation to calm the mind and heal the body and so forth. But today, this morning, I'm going to discuss about how we're going to approach one's soul, our soul, through meditation. So this takes us into a very different level of understanding of what the practice of meditation can do for us spiritually. It's not to negate the other approaches to meditation that the public in general is now experiencing. But this is just raising the bar a notch, let's say, and taking us into the spiritual realm. This approach to meditation that I'm going to be talking about this morning takes advanced thinking. This kind of meditation will take advanced thinking, discipline, and also concentration. Okay, advanced thinking, discipline, and concentration, plus a desire to have communion with the higher worlds. So you see how different this kind of meditation is, just what we're learning right now in these few words, how different it is from, the general understanding of meditation today. Yet meditation is not really that new to some of us, because many of us were engaged in the path of meditation in previous lives. Think about this. So when we came into this incarnation, meditation was not something outside of ourselves, but something, a discipline that was and is inherent to our consciousness. So think about this, really think about this, because I certainly did, and I remember the day that I had an awakening, like an epiphany of the fact that I had been meditating since I was a little child. And that epiphany came about as a result of thinking about music. That my method of meditation back when I was a child was through music. So music taught me to think in the higher mind, to experience life in the higher mind, to be inspired through ideas and visions precipitating from the higher mind. But I didn't recognize it. It was just natural. That's why I'm saying it's inherent in many of us. When we first came into this incarnation, that meditation was a natural process for us. The goal of meditation is a progressive awakening into our higher self. It is a progressive awakening. Progressive is the key word. It is a progressive awakening into our higher self, until our awareness is merged with the awareness of the whole. When we read in the teachings, the Ageless Wisdom teachings, it tells us that soul consciousness, when one has soul consciousness, it means that we are an integral part of the whole, that we no longer think that we are separate from the whole. So this starts as an individual, and then we begin to see our family, that our family is part of all families. Then we begin to realize and recognize is that our group is part of all groups. Then we begin to recognize that religion is all one. I had that experience a number of years ago in traveling to different countries and going to different monasteries and churches and attending different religious services. And I began to see that common thread, that golden thread that is recognizable no matter what religion, what church, what denomination you belong to or you're visiting. You're going to, when you are functioning, when your consciousness is functioning in the light of the higher mind, you see the commonality. And that commonality is what was given to and created from, a religion that was created from what the great ones gave to us, gave to different cultures, gave to different countries. But until we can function in that light of the higher mind, the light of the soul, we're unable to recognize our relationship with the whole. So back to meditation, okay? So what we're saying at this point regarding meditation, I think it tells us that there are various kinds of approaches to meditation. But again, let me reiterate that this particular approach is called the soul approach. It is selfless and it concentrates on our future. Now, we will have some experiences next Sunday during the part 2. Today, I'm just going to kind of create the foundation for us so that we can really understand and recognize the this meditation approach, which is the path to the soul. Okay. Remember I said that the goal of meditation is a progressive awakening into our higher self. Well, this means then that in the first stage of meditation, we're going to be identified with our personality life, where our soul, our unfolding human soul, becomes identified, really identified with the physical body, then the emotional body, then the mental body, or also called the physical vehicle, the emotional vehicle, the mental vehicle. And at this point, at this stage, our human soul, our divine spark, is very, very comfortable, really comfortable, identifying and living within these three bodies. But then there comes a time that we outgrow that stage and we slowly merge into a higher existence. And this higher existence is called the fiery part of ourselves. This all comes about through this advanced stage or advanced approach, let's call it, to meditation or the path of the soul. What is so beautiful is that during this process, we are becoming more, not less. We are becoming more real, not less real. We are becoming more awake, not less awake, more conscious, not less conscious. The teaching gives us an example, saying that in the beginning, we are just like an extinguished fire. What is an extinguished fire? Well, the teaching in this example says an extinguished fire is like a lump of charcoal. Okay? Part of the charcoal is lit, but the rest is dark coal. The dark coal is the unrealized part of ourselves. So I think this is a beautiful symbol of who we are, what we are, and the process of our awakening. So let us imagine that this charcoal passes through 5 stages. We're going to be passing through 5 stages before we can be completely lit. Are you with me? Okay, great. Isn't this fun? Yeah, yeah, it is. It is. So the first stage of this fire covers our personality, in which the fire achieves mastery. The fire is our divine spark, our unfolding human soul. This first stage in which the fire achieves mastery upon his physical, emotional, and mental nature. Now the second stage, after we've gained control, after the soul is now in control of these 3 vehicles, it moves to the second stage, which is to fuse its personality with the capital S soul. Do you know what this is called?
Soul infusion.
Exactly. Soul infusion. Soul infusion. In the next stage, the soul infused personality realizes, wow, I'm becoming more and more real. There's a book that many of us studied in the beginning, which was called The Science of Becoming Oneself. And in reality, we could have titled this morning's talk, The Science of Becoming Oneself. So meditation seems to be the path of discovery of oneself. So at this next stage, our soul-infused personality realizes he's becoming more himself. So let us call this stage the awareness of the monad, M-O-N-A-D. The fire continues to progress, and on the next stage, he unites with the planetary life and feels himself as a global entity, one with the whole life in the globe. Now, we see world servers today who are functioning at that state of consciousness. They are totally decentralized in their nature. These are the ones who travel around the world and inspire leaders of nations, who are fearless, who are able to go into a country that is an enemy and try to inspire them with unity, with the principles of, the true principles of the soul. These individuals, even though they look like one person, they are a conglomerate of energy and life waves from the higher realms of life. So they carry a great deal of fire with them, and this is why they are oftentimes able to either initiate change in the consciousness of a nation, or they're planting seeds that over time are nurtured and blossom. Then there is the 5th stage. So we've gone from the stage where our unfolding human spark, our divine part, feels that he is part of or is united with the planetary life. And now going into the fifth stage, which is even another phase of himself to be realized, is the awareness of God consciousness. The awareness of God consciousness, or being one with the solar logos. To understand the path of meditation through a soul approach, we can read about the life of Saint Sergius, who reached that fifth stage. Saint Sergius was an extraordinary person who, through his life example, showed us what is possible when one has God consciousness. Saint Sergius was born May 3rd in the year 1313 or 1314, we're not sure. But we are sure that he died September 25th in 1392. So I'm going to share a little bit about just a small portion of his life during which we can see exemplified what it means to have an awareness of God consciousness or be at that fifth stage. One day when Saint Sergius was serving the Divine Liturgy with his brother and his nephew Isaac the Quiet, Isaac saw near the altar a fourth priest who was glowing with a great light. After the liturgy, two of the monks went over to see Saint Sergius to talk with him and to tell him what they had seen. Finally, with their persistence, Saint Sergius answered, saying, "Okay, if God revealed this to you, I do not wish to hide it. That which you saw was an angel of the Lord, with whom I, although unworthy, I always serve. But do not say anything about what you saw as long as I am alive." On another occasion, Saint Sergius was celebrating the Divine Liturgy in the presence of his disciple Simon, the ecclesiarch. Simon had an extraordinary vision. He said that during the liturgy he saw a fire which touched the table and surrounded the holy altar. At the moment of communion, the fire entered the chalice, and the saint received communion in this manner. Seeing this, Simon was filled with terror and fear, as we might imagine. Saying to Saint Sergius, "Master, I never had an awesome vision. I saw the grace of the Holy Spirit acting with you." But the saint forbid him to speak of it. And he said, "Do not tell anyone what you saw until I die." Isn't this the ultimate humility? The ultimate humility. And it reminds all of us, it's not what we say, it's what we do and how we live our life that's important. So that's the fifth stage. In every teaching, we find a symbol of this fiery ascent. In every teaching, we find this symbol of fiery ascent. See, that's the golden thread that we want to look for. The time is coming and is already near when people will not know how to accept these fiery possibilities. In their confusion, they will forget that fiery communion has been ordained. They will excel in counteracting instead of being filled with the power of fire. There is a wonderful book written by Torquem Sardarian called The Other Worlds. And in that book, there is a chapter on fiery baptism, which you might enjoy reading or rereading. Many mysteries incomprehensible to the intellect are revealed when one is in communion with the divine element of fire. Okay, meditation. Back to meditation. Okay. So meditation is an effort to come in contact with our soul. What we call the capital S soul is different from our unfolding human soul. We can also use the word the higher self. So the capital S soul or the higher self. This is what meditation for us is to make an effort to come in contact with this great light. And then to have the ability to translate the wisdom of the soul into thoughts, to translate the wisdom of the soul into thoughts, to serve humanity as a whole, and to bring divine beauty and order to the world. In meditation, the activities of their mind are subjected to the direction and the intent of the will of the soul. In meditation, the activities of the mind are subjected to the direction and intention of the will of the soul. So true meditation starts on the higher mental planes, in serenity and fusion with the light of the soul. So to help us really understand this, make it come alive and not just words, let's go back to that first stage for a minute and realize that, this is where the bulk of humanity is now, where their unfolded human soul is trying to master the physical, emotional, mental bodies. Now, this doesn't mean that everybody is doing that. Not everybody is. But what it does mean is that when we have that moment of awakening, and as a result of that moment of awakening, we want to change ourselves for the better, through that process of the science of becoming oneself. We don't know that term yet, perhaps, but we're inspired. It's just like we're flooded with this wave of energy that we can't continue to live and think the same way tomorrow that we are today. That's that point where that all-important first stage takes place with meditation, and it can be a stage that we call recapitulation, where the human soul now realizes that it can't slumber any longer, in this incarnation, and it has a job to do. So then it begins to, either slowly or rapidly, depending on our karma and state of beingness, organizing the physical, emotional, mental body so it can become soul infused. That's when true meditation begins. This is when our meditations take place in the higher mind. What's important is to realize this is not a suspended state of consciousness. That's a different kind of meditation, which is not this meditation path. To be suspended in a suspended state of consciousness is really understood as a trance state. And that's not this kind of approach or meditation approach to the soul. So when we begin to function in the light of the higher mind, our consciousness is not in a suspended state. It is when our whole being shares the light and energy generated in meditation through the soul's light that is now penetrating into our bodies as a kind of electricity. Okay, you with me? Okay. When in meditation we come in contact with our capital S soul, the higher self, we begin to realize the fundamental principles of our soul and to build our life activities upon the virtues and the principles of the soul. This is why I was saying that some of our world leaders, we would call them world disciples today, when they go to other parts of the world and they begin to present a dialogue and a communication which strongly mirrors the virtues and the principles of that capital S soul, you know that they are also being inspired by the planetary life. And they are living a decentralized life. Now, meditation is the best method to bridge the gap between our lower mind and our higher mind. And do know that there is a definite gap between these two, a definite gap between the lower mind and the higher mind. The higher level is the world of the inner guide. The higher level is the world of the inner guide, also known as the abstract levels of the mind, through which we then begin to contact the universe. One point that Torquem Serdarian has made in his many books about meditation, but real specifically in a book entitled The Science of Meditation, he sums meditation up in a way that we recognize it is so different. This approach to meditation is so different from any Buddhist kind of meditation or yogic kind of meditation. He sums it up by saying that meditation is the art of thinking. It is the art of thinking. It doesn't mean that, you know, if you have a lot of thoughts in your head, that you have engaged in the art of thinking. The art of thinking is when we can create our thoughts, and those thoughts become a beautiful form that then can be used to change the consciousness of ourselves, our family, our community, our nation, and our world. So meditation is the art of thinking. During this process, the evolving human soul is now presenting a question or a need in the light of the soul through a little tiny bridge. A tiny bridge. Through a tiny bridge called the Antakarana. That's Antahkarana. That's Antakarana. Now the soul is anchored in the lotus on the three higher mental planes. And even though the soul is anchored there, sometimes we call the solar angel. Even though the solar angel or soul is anchored in these three higher spheres of the mind, it functions mostly in the spiritual triad. Last week I talked about the triad and the three links, the mental atom, the Buddhic atom, and the Atmic atom. Remember that? And I said these three links are called connecting links to three great angels. So the soul is anchored in the lotus and functions mostly in the spiritual triad. When your question or need reaches a degree of high frequency, it evokes a direct answer from the soul. So the key point here is that our question must reach a particular degree of frequency. You know, as a musician, I would see that frequency as a cycle of vibration, that there has to be a very intense vibration that's very clear and sends out our question in such a way that it receives a direct answer from the soul. Now, the answer that will come from the soul comes in two ways. One, it's given to us as an idea or as a wave of energy. Ideas are placed or precipitated into our mental atmosphere by the soul, by our great teachers, or by us if we are advanced enough to reach the intuitional plane. So, as we are beginning to realize now, hopefully, meditation teaches us how to communicate with our souls and with the souls of others. Meditation is a journey toward the one self, toward the inner light, toward the source of love and the power within. Without meditation, the teaching explains it is impossible to progress upon the path, because the path itself is a process of sublimation and transformation. So are we really gathering it in now, really understanding what meditation is and what the benefits are? Okay, good. So let us further define meditation. Meditation is a process of touching or contacting the powerhouse, or that treasure house that's within us. As we touch that center of power and glory, our physical, emotional, and mental vehicles are charged with power and joy. Our physical and mental vehicles function through the energy coming from our soul, and this energy is called psychic energy. Okay. So the soul is a source of this psychic energy. And from this psychic energy, we become charged with power and joy. Meditation is a process of formulating and translating those impressions and inspirations which pour into our mind at the time of soul contact. Meditation is a noble tool, for it helps us to think and act and speak and even write more clearly, in accordance with the highest good for all humanity. It increases our capacity to serve, to understand people, and to understand their problems, and to meet needs creatively. It helps us to remain in the light of the soul and to act from that level. There's no time, so I won't get into it. So anyway, when this process, is taking place, then we become a fountain of inspiration, courage, and power for our friends and for our co-workers, or for those in need. What comes to mind here is the word constant. When our unfolding human soul reaches at least that soul-infused stage, and then eventually realizing it at that monadic stage, this is when the person's consciousness, meaning the person's opinions and ideas and day-to-day life, no longer fluctuates. It no longer goes up and down. How we define an emotionally based person is that one day they're this way, the next day they're that way, and 3 days later they're somebody completely different. Or that their ideas, their intelligence formulates opinions one day and tomorrow gets, flip-flop. We're all familiar with that political term, flip-flop, right? Yeah, so when our divine spark, when our unfolding human soul finally becomes soul infused and then ultimately functioning with the reality of the monad, then constancy is what is recognized in that being's nature. Now, meditation also breaks the limitations which attachment imposes on us and upon our life, because in meditation our consciousness is lifted up into the purpose, into the direction, into the goal of our soul. Our soul leads us to persons and places and books and events through whom and through which we learn and expand and follow the path of our inner calling and fulfill our creative urges. And it just came to me, and I do want to share this because we tend to deify people in such a way that if we think that they have reached that constant state of consciousness, of beingness, that they're so different from us. But then later on we find out, wow, I feel that too, or I've experienced that too. This is what the difference is. When a person's soul their unfolding human soul is functioning through the light or the soul-infused nature, then they come under attack by the dark forces. And that's their test. The dark forces are shuddering in fear that that individual or that group or that nation is actually going to help the world to evolve. So that being comes under dark attacks. And if there's any fear or any concerns or problems left in the karmic bank of that individual, they're going to be tested. But we don't have to worry about that yet, okay? Once, I guess that would be their test. It's like we have our own tests, but their test will be to pull on that light in a way that we haven't yet developed. The mental plane is a very mysterious realm of consciousness, but to begin meditation, it is necessary for us to coordinate our mental plane. The mental plane is a sphere of light, and in this sphere there are billions of tiny atoms darting about. These tiny atoms are 7 hues of yellow, each representing a level of the mental plane. But the atoms with their different colors, different hues, intermingle. So now imagine this. Imagine that these tiny atoms are gradually forming geometric patterns, creating a symphony of color on the mental plane. And at the highest point is the magnificent form of a lotus, acting as the inspirational point of this great symphony of color and radiation. So meditation organizes the mental sphere into a living color symphony in which each hue is sensitive to impression. And I will stop here, but we will continue on next Sunday. Okay?